afternoon, everyone. I am so pumped to be here. I'm so happy today. My name is Kevin Geck. I'm a member of the professional services organization here at Replicant. I've had the opportunity to work with many of you on your implementations, and for those of you that I haven't, that was too bad for you. What we have today here is a really interesting case study. So how many of you out here have big senior populations in the terms of the percentage of people who call in? Okay, that's good, yeah. And how many of you have to deal with compliance in getting a lot of things, different things? Okay, yeah, a lot of you. All right, so then we have a great case study for you. What we're gonna go through is a new engagement that we're doing with Replicant with American Specialty Health. So I'm gonna go through a little bit about ASH, as they're styled, talk about the deployment that we have underway. We're about halfway through the build. And then go through a few of the conversation design decisions that we're making to help make this a successful thinking machine for seniors out there. So I think for those of you who have been through the implementation process, you'll find this a really interesting presentation. All right, so who is ASH? ASH helps keeps Americans fit. It provides a benefit on behalf of health insurance companies that allows seniors and other different populations to access fitness programs at home or at various fitness centers as a part of their insurance benefit that they have. So ASH, as a part of Silver and Fit, provides this program for seniors. So for seniors out there who have Cigna or they have Medicare, when they are enrolling in that program, they're able to use ASH to access those different fitness networks. So the business of ASH revolves around the enrollment period. So in January, which is the primary period, you have tens of thousands of people calling at once about accessing their Silver and Fit benefit. So you can imagine on those first few days, super long hold times, average handle time of up to 12 minutes for the agents. A disjointed experience as you ramp up new people as they work with the callers on the phone. And then you have a senior population that may or may not be willing to stay on the line so much. So over the past few months, ASH partnered with Replicant to put together a program to help handle these calls as a part of the Silver and Fit program that's going on. As you can see by the quote on the screen, it's about quality of life and about providing a great member experience for ASH members all across the country. Yes, we're gonna see better costs, we're gonna see better analytics, we're gonna see a better overall call experience, but it's really about the members. And so what are we doing? So you guys have gone through a deployment with me before. We're gonna authenticate people. We're gonna help them through the main thing that they need to do, get their ID, which will allow them to get into the fitness center. We're gonna help them find where they're gonna go, and we're gonna answer some FAQs. We're integrating with the homegrown CRM. It's fantastic. We're working with Genesis. Seems like something right up the Replicant alley. Definitely is, and we're really excited about this engagement and what we have going in the future. But it's not exactly that simple. It might never be, but we have a few different things that we've thought about as we've gone into the design that have made it a little more interesting to think about that I think you guys will find really engaging as well. So we have HIPAA and digital newbies. Now, I'm a digital native. I'm a millennial. I'm from this particular generation. And I think one thing that we thought about in terms of this presentation was folks who aren't so savvy. How do we get them using technology in the way that many of the rest of us do? And so in the Replicant engagement, as many of you know, we start with the persona. And you can see this person up here. We have a senior citizen who's working out at home. When we listen to the calls, so we always start with the call listening, the fascinating thing, the thing that really stood out was how motivated these people were. This isn't customer support. These are people who got a letter from their health insurance company or their doctor informed them that, hey, here's a benefit that you have that you should really access. You really want to stay healthy. So they're picking up the phone, calling American Specialty Health to try to, live longer, try to be there for their friends, for their family, and for themselves. So when we think about, okay, this call flow, we have a motivated caller who we think will be willing to stay on the line, interact with the thinking machine, and complete what they need to do to get their benefit. Now, that's a good thing. What becomes a little more difficult is the context. So we talked first about the goal of the caller, and then always moving about the context. Why are these people calling? It's what I think about every day when we look at calls with you guys, when we look at the design, when we think about the scripting and the flow. Why are people calling versus going to the website, versus using a mobile app? In this case, Ash has a Silver and Fit website. Folks can definitely access it. So why are they calling, and how can that help us think about a flow that will help them get what they need, which is get their ID and get fit? I think there's two reasons that are applicable to any replicant customer, anyone who's operating a call center. The first thing is the process is opaque. When you listen to the callers call in, they ask about accessing their Silver and Fit benefit, or, I want to learn more about Silver and Fit, or I need to activate Silver and Fit. They're not asking about their ID. They're not asking about, login information. This detailed process where they need to get their ID, figure out what centers are available, understand their eligibility in the first place, get some of these FAQs answered, they're not necessarily going to volunteer that at the beginning. It's a complex product that they're getting, so their understanding at the beginning isn't that great. So from a thinking machine perspective, we need to meet callers further where they are, and that is where they don't understand the process necessarily or the org chart behind it. The second thing is that we know that we know that there's a website, but they opted to call. Why did they do that in the first place? When we listen to the calls, we hear people say, I don't use email. I'm not really comfortable navigating your website. So they're making this choice to use their preferred channel, voice, and they're going to be expecting a human. And what are they getting? A talking thinking machine. So because we're making our way further and further to them, we're seeing that, okay, they really called because they wanted to talk to a person. They weren't so comfortable going to the website. And so when we get them on the phone, we really need to meet them even further where they are in the conversation design with more practical questions that can help them through the flow and give them their answers. And I think for all of us out here, there's various conversation designs we've worked on together. I think thinking about meeting callers even further where they are and understanding their choice in channel is something that's super applicable. All right. You ready to get into the design? I have a few interactive pieces for us now. So as you're familiar with Replicant, we talk about the flow and we talk about the scripting. So I'm going to show you one flow to start. Very common Replicant flow, where we have a greeting, open-ended question to determine intent. Once we determine intent, a few different steps through the workflow, and then another open-ended question. In this case, I want to draw your attention particularly to the open-ended question right after the greeting. So I want to throw this to the audience. What are some advantages and disadvantages of having an open-ended question at the beginning of the flow? Could go down many different paths. They could not give you the correct intent. Okay.
Reading them at their language. So you may say something in a prompting that they don't equate with, and then maybe they're going down the wrong path.
All right, so we have a couple advantages, like what Lisa mentioned. We're able to meet them where they are. They can state their intent right away. We can try to figure that out. We also have some disadvantages. They could literally say anything. They might say customer service right away. Let's look at a second option. So in this case, we're going to give the greeting, and we're going to go right into the authentication process. After that, for those who make it through, we're going to give them that fitness ID, the thing that they need, that they might not know that they need, right away. We're going to give them right away the opportunity to figure out where they need to go in terms of the fitness center locations. And then in the last question, critically, we're going to give them a few more options of things they can say and then ask what they need, as opposed to opening it up broad again with another open-ended question. Now thinking about the persona and those insights from our discovery, this kind of makes sense. People don't exactly know what they're looking for. They're motivated, so we want to guide them through the flow. And because they're not super tech savvy, they're not going to know everything that they can ask the thinking machine. If you look at option B, our hypothesis is a thinking machine-led experience through the flow is going to help people have a better experience, actually get what they need and resolve the call. Even if the call does go over to an agent, the agent is going to be pretty sure that the caller got their ID, that they were authenticated, that they heard a fitness location or two. And so that 12-minute average handle time can go way down. So the combination of the design along with understanding who the caller is and what they really need without even hearing it from them helps us put together a different type of conversation for the customer. All right, next piece. We talk about scripting. We've mentioned the one breath rule here. We also talk a lot about the repetitiveness of the thinking machine. You might have submitted a ticket to me to fix the fallbacks. We're getting on it, yes. So we have two options. I'm going to show them both at once. We have option A with a pretty crisp explanation of how to leverage the benefit. The second is a little longer. It's a little more flowery, and we ask again, do you need me to repeat your fitness ID number? Now I'm going to put it out to the audience again. What do you think the advantage might be of having a little more scripting and asking again the question, did they get the ID in this case?
Well, you're dealing with the senior audience, so you're just repeating information that they may not have captured.
That's amazing. That's exactly right. Our hypothesis here, based on our experience with a couple other customers who focus on senior populations, is adding a little extra in the scripting and being a little more repetitive helps them complete the flow better. Like, you're exactly right. That's exactly what we're thinking here. We want to have more engagement. There's also a fact of the matter that seniors aren't so time crunched, maybe, as other folks out there. So they're willing to wait a little longer on the thinking machine. Many of our designs are much more punchy and spare, but thinking about this population, we're going to add a little more, and we're going to offer to repeat things to help them get what they want and complete the flow. So again, once they get to the agent can know, like, oh, let me check. Did you get, I have your ID is this. Did you get that? We're able to have that business change, that business value realization through this type of conversation design, thinking about who we're working with. All right, one more example. So HIPAA. The requirement for us here is we cannot store any of the data in the replicant platform. So those of you who are familiar with collection, when we have sensitive information or information that we might have low confidence we're gonna get on the first try, we use explicit confirmation where we read back what we got to confirm that we got it. It's in many of our thinking machines. It's a good technique for this type of turn. We can't do that here. Can't do that here right now. So how are we gonna make this happen? How are we gonna think about making sure that we're gonna get good results on these turns? We have two avenues by which we've done that. The first is through our experience with you guys, we know best practice in terms of conversation design for collecting names. Spell out really works. It works really, really well. So we have a design best practice that's been battle tested across many of our customers. The second thing is we have some really sweet new technology around transcription that's giving us a lot more confidence that we're gonna be able to collect those letters one at a time and make sure that we can pass something good back to our client system and authenticate the callers. So even though we're talking about, HIPAA might be a boogeyman and compliance is something that's very difficult to work around in terms of your application, we're going back to basics. We're going back to replicant conversation design best practices and our strength in our product and leveraging those to work through these types of challenges. So I would say for those of you who are thinking about automating different flows or not sure about the efficacy of certain use cases, throw it to us. We'll see what we can catch. And we think this is a great example. We're really excited to get this going for American Specialty Health in the coming weeks. All right. So a few takeaways. I wanted to share, a couple observations having worked on a bunch of different projects and how we've taken what we've learned and incorporated it into our latest engagements. There's something that, in terms of organizational engagement, that we've done on this project that I think has really worked out really well. So we have both horizontal and vertical alignment. And so I'm like a runway person here. But in the conversation design sessions, we've had folks from the functional team, we've had folks from the technical team, we've had telephony, we've had senior leaders. We've had a lot more people involved at the very beginning to make sure that everything in the design is accounted for. Everyone's a little more bought in. It's a little less siloed. And we're really taking that holistic operational approach to building the thinking machine. So as you're thinking about more use cases, thinking about project models in the future, getting that engagement across the spectrum going forward is something you can leverage to help you make decisions in your projects. In terms of vertical alignment, it takes a lot to build APIs for Replicant and get them going in a project quickly. Like, we know that. It's something that we talk with all of you all the time about getting those up and running to get the bot up and running. The engagement that we've had in this project is senior engineering leadership at ASH was engaged in those design sessions as well. So for that person, it's not only, okay, I need resources for the replicant project and okay, here's the project plan and the timeline. That person being engaged in actually scoping out the effort, putting together part of the specification, has helped sequence the development process on the ASH side. And so not only is this person very aware of what's going on, but they really are familiar with the build and can work with us on trade-offs. Because inevitably, there will be a time when part of the API will need to be delivered later. Maybe we need to make a trade-off at some point in the project. Having that engagement with the leadership on the engineering side from the beginning, I think is very beneficial to helping us make these types of decisions and trade-offs that we do in replicant projects. And so it's another fantastic lesson learned that I think we can take with us across our engagements going forward. One last thing, close to my heart, We spend a lot of time thinking about conversation design and the best practices, as well as machine learning. But when we get into the projects, it gets so hot and heavy. Like, we're doing 3 weeks of design and 6 weeks of build and 2 weeks of testing and going live, and it's so pell-mell that we don't step back, just think about how freaking cool this is. Like, we're making these talking robots to handle thousands of calls and scale up immediately to meet your needs. And did we do a good job of just explaining to you, to the project team, like, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's the building blocks of design. Here's the building blocks of machine learning. You know, what I think about to myself more and more is, could I enable any person on your project team to go home and talk about, wow, how we're doing this cool project with Replicant. You don't have to be Benjamin to have a good, explainer of what machine learning is and how this technology is going to affect your contact center. So something that we're going to do more and more, especially as we roll out the Builder tab and as we do more engagements, just kind of circle back to the novel nature of our task. And so we're really excited with a lot of the future initiatives that we have. And I'll open it up for questions now.
How did you engage with the security team on the HIPAA front? I imagine they were a pretty key stakeholder here.
Yes, so they were involved in the design sessions. And then in terms of getting into the integration testing, there's a checkpoint on the Ash side first before they're going to expose any data to Replicant. Also in the design, we're not interfacing directly. There's a few different checkpoints in between us and the actual data. So there's both a process and a technology solution that we put forth there. Hey.
Were there any aha moments as you were going through with this particular demographic? What were those where you thought you were going down the right path and you may have had to step back and say, we didn't get this right, and now you're using that going forward?
Absolutely. So I think the early, how can I help you? When you think about discovering someone's intent, you're kind of assuming that they know what their intent is. And like listening to the calls over and over and over again, we heard people say a generic, like, I just want to register for Silver and Fit. We didn't hear necessarily, oh, I need my fitness ID. So one of the kind of the aha moments, what I talked about was kind of thinking about the best agent experience, knowing that, listening to calls and seeing that the best agents lead people through the flow every time. And so when you think about like the upshot for design going forward, getting further to the customer, being a little more savvy with using how may I help you in terms of meeting customers where they are, having a few more triaging questions at the beginning to figure out who they are that way. And if you listen to good agent calls, a good agent will ask a few good questions. They might hear something generic and then be like, ask 1, 2, 3, like, okay, then I need to help you with this, or I need to help you with that. And I think that's a design tool that is applicable to any use case. Yes, Ram.
So going forward, who would you recommend join the table as you're going through the design phase from our customers?
Sure. So a functional lead to manage the conversation design, for sure. The person who's going to build the APIs, whoever, like the technical product owner who's going to be in charge of that. The person involved with telephony, like getting that person engaged like the whole time to help them see the call flow. And then senior leadership as well. Like, we had very good engagement from the project champion as well as the engineering leader. It just gives everyone a 360 view. Like, we don't go into calls surprised. Everyone's aware of the design, aware of the trade-offs. Because we know in projects, like, something will change. Something will happen where we'll need to make an adjustment. If everyone has that visibility from the very beginning, we're able to make those adjustments on the fly much better.
Hey, Kevin, and you're going through this process. There's a lot of different pathways that a senior citizen can go because they don't know how to ask the question that based on your whole topic today. So when you were going through this process, how did you manage like the outliers, all the different things that people could say, and keep it on track for what the goal and the expectation was?
Absolutely. This is where we're leveraging the concept of the happy path versus those exceptions and unsupported flows. So one of the interesting things about working with Ash in this case is they've tried something like this with the previous vendor before, and it was analysis paralysis, so whiteboarding to death. And I think that is what given the amount of time that we have, it's something we want to avoid. So we leverage the call listening number one and our pre-sales discovery to see what those unsupported flows are going to be and just put them out in the open with the customer group to understand, hey, 75% of callers are going to go down a happy path. We want to focus on building for that. And then here's all the unsupported flows that we want to have a graceful recognition and transfer to an agent to handle. So throughout the pre-sales process into discovery and design, we've continually asked ourselves the question, is this going to be in the happy path, or is this something that's an unsupported flow for future engagement or automation? So being very diligent about, number one, understanding what the primary use case is and sticking to that. And then number two, just marking down, keeping sure that we're keeping track of all those unsupported flows is how we made it through the process. Okay, thank you very much.